Ring-a-ring-a roses, a pocket full of posies, a tissue, we all fall down. But in the dusky twilight of the old neighborhood, where Jamie tread cautiously along the cobbled path, the words twisted and turned like the branches of the gnarled trees overhead. Ring-a-ring-a whispers, a pocket full of mysteries, a shiver, we all fall down. Jamie, with eyes as wide as saucers and a heart that sought adventure in every shadow, had just moved into the sleepy town that felt like it was coated with a layer of dust from another time. The air thrummed with secrets, and Jamie listened. Next door stood a house that tugged at Jamie's curiosity, its windows like eyes that never closed. In one such window sat a dollhouse, an exact miniature of their neighborhood. It was made with such precision that looking at it felt like gazing through a looking glass into another world. A world where everything was still and silent, as if waiting for something to happen. In front of that dollhouse sat Annie. Her presence was like a cold draft in a warm room. She spoke softly, reciting rhymes that danced and twisted through the air, her old soul eyes peering through locks of hair like spun gold. At night, when the moon hung heavy in the sky, Jamie lay in bed listening to the hushed secrets that seemed to seep through the walls. The air grew thick with the weight of unspoken stories, and shadows played about the room, shadows without a source. In school, Jamie's thoughts would drift to Annie and her eerie house. There was fear, yes, icy tendrils that wrapped around Jamie's heart, but there was also an irresistible pull, a desire to unravel the enigma that was Annie. Their paths crossed under the archaic oak tree by the playground. "Do you want to play?" Annie's voice barely rose above a whisper, but it carried an undercurrent of urgency. It felt as though every word was measured, carrying more weight than they should. In Annie's house, there stood a room where dolls lined shelves and filled cabinets with glassy-eyed stares. Each was crafted with meticulous care, but one caught Jamie's eye. A doll with a familiar face, one that bore resemblance to a boy they'd seen on posters stamped with missing. And then there was that night, that peculiar night, when Jamie startled awake to see darkness stretch and twist across their lawn. It moved deliberately towards Annie's house, a shadow without a master. A shiver trailed down Jamie's spine as they watched from their bed, heart pounding with an unspoken question. Who cast you if not from this world? Ring-a-ring-a roses, a pocket full of poses. Hush, 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 hush! We all fall down. The rhyme echoed oddly in Jamie's head as they sat among the dust and shadows of the school library, the pages of history whispering secrets of years gone by. The books towered around Jamie like silent sentinels, keeping watch while the child's fingers traced the edges of yellowed newspaper clippings, each headline a chilling hint of a story untold. Outside, thunder grumbled, the sky darkening as if to shroud Jamie's search in secrecy. With each peal of thunder, the library lights flickered, casting long, grasping shadows that seemed to reach for Jamie from the corners of the room. That night at Annie's house was a sleepover like no other. The storm outside had grown fierce, and the wind howled like a pack of wolves at the door. With an abrupt hush, darkness enveloped them as the power surrendered to the tempest's rage. The flashlights' beams became swords cutting through the blackness, but they were weak and trembling in the hands of children. Then it began. The dolls. They whispered secrets to each other with voices like crumbling paper, their glassy eyes reflecting the lightning that painted the room in staccato bursts of white. Jamie's heart hammered against their chest as they watched dolls rise and shift with a life of their own. Porcelain faces turned ever so slightly toward them with each flicker of light. Morning came with a hush over the town. Another child had vanished into thin air, a teenager with dreams and fears now just echoes in the void. The townspeople exchanged worried glances, speaking in hushed tones that hung heavy with dread. In Annie's room, light filtered through tattered curtains and fell upon her diary, a tome that seemed to throb with a pulse of its own. Jamie's hands trembled as they paged through it, revealing scrawls and sketches of children with hollow eyes. These were Annie's new friends, playmates trapped in ink and parchment. That evening brought another storm, and with it another blackout. Laughter, invisible yet clear, filled the darkness. It danced around Jamie, playful yet sinister, a cacophony that bore into their very soul. Panic gripped Jamie as they stumbled through Annie's house, each step guided by memory and flashes from outside that pierced through windows like jagged shards. Their breath was ragged whispers against the laughter that seemed to be closing in from all sides. Finally, Jamie's quivering hands found solace on a doorknob, a door that creaked open to reveal a room wallpapered with photographs, windows into moments stolen from time. Faces of children who once laughed and played were immortalized here. Their smiles did not reach their eyes. In this final revelation, Jamie stood alone, surrounded by faces without voices, a gallery of lost souls looking back at them from beyond. The silent audience bore witness to terror personified, as Jamie realized that these walls held stories far more sinister than any whispered lullaby could tell. Chapter 3: Porcelain Nightmares. In the hushed corridors of the school, whispers fluttered like moths against old lamps. The murmurs twisted around Jamie, each word a tickle of dread at the back of their neck. "The dollmaker's curse," they breathed, eyes darting with shared horror. Jamie shuffled through the crowd, feeling the weight of each gaze as if they were tangible things, heavy and ominous. Annie cornered Jamie by the rusted water fountains, her eyes deep pools of ancient secrets. "You've been snooping," she said, tone delicate yet edged with a warning. Jamie met her gaze, heart pounding. Words caught in their throat like trapped butterflies. I've heard things," Jamie stammered, the chill in Annie's stare colder than the water dribbling from the tap. In the quiet that followed, something unspoken passed between them, a dance of fear and knowledge that left Jamie's skin prickling with gooseflesh. That night, as shadows pooled in the corners of Jamie's room, sleep became an elusive ghost. They found themselves in a world draped in silk and moonlight, but every surface was cold and hard, porcelain. Their arms no longer bent, their skin gleamed an unnatural white. Tiny painted lips and glassy eyes stared back at them from a mirror that shouldn't have been there. The nightmare seeped into daybreak, clinging to Jamie's thoughts like cobwebs. At breakfast, their hands trembled around the milk carton, spilling rivulets across the tablecloth. "Careful," their mother scolded gently, unaware of the terror that clung to Jamie's bones. Later, Jamie's little sibling sat on the living room floor, cradling an antique doll that neither of them remembered owning. It was a thing of eerie beauty, hair like golden threads and a dress that seemed to drink in the sunlight. When Jamie reached out to touch it, a jolt of unease shot through their fingertips. The air around it felt dead, hollowed out by an unseen force. The day dragged on, heavy and slow, until dusk crept over their home. As twilight bled into nightfall, Jamie caught glimpses of themselves in windows and mirrors, not as flesh and blood, but as painted porcelain figures within the dollhouse next door. With heartbeats thundering in their ears like drumbeats from some otherworldly tribe, they listened as children gathered outside beneath the indigo sky. "1, 2, buckle my shoe." The sing-song voices wove through the darkness, innocent yet laden with an insidious chill that clawed at Jamie's mind. Panic built within them as they moved from room to room, only to find each one empty. No family, no laughter, just silence and those relentless recitations drifting through cracked windows. 3, 4, shut the door. The voices swelled until they drowned everything else out. Jamie backed away from the window pane that now showed only their reflection amidst tiny furnished rooms and static doll figures with sightless gazes. 5, 6. Jamie's breath fogged against the glass as they touched it once more, half expecting fingertips to meet cold porcelain instead of their own warm skin. Pick up sticks. As terror constricted around their chest like tightening laces on a corset, Jamie was left alone, trapped in a house that mirrored Annie's haunting dollhouse with frightening precision. Outside, children continued to sing beneath a mocking crescent moon. Chapter 4: Into the Dollhouse. Ring-a-ring-a roses, a pocket full of posies. The whispered echo of the nursery rhyme seemed to twist and turn through the musty air, wrapping around Jamie's mind like a cold hand as they stood before the crooked door of Annie's house. Gathering courage like a cloak around their shivering body, Jamie pushed the door open with a creak that sounded like a scream in the silence. Inside, the house was not as they remembered. It defied all logic and reason. Walls leaned at impossible angles, coming together to form a labyrinthine network of corridors that stretched endlessly before them. The air was thick, almost chewy, with an ever-present dimness that swallowed the light, making each step feel like a descent into the belly of some slumbering beast. As Jamie ventured deeper, they saw them, children with hollow expressions, meandering aimlessly, as if plucked from time itself and dropped into this eerie stillness. Their eyes were windows to lost souls, searching for an escape they could never seem to find. "Annie!" Jamie called out, their voice fracturing in the strange atmosphere. It was then that they saw her at the end of a corridor that seemed to breathe with a life of its own. Annie turned slowly, her golden hair flowing in an unseen wind. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, her voice an unsettling mix of innocent child and ancient wisdom. "I had to," Jamie replied, resolve fortifying their voice. "I need to know why this is happening. The missing kids, it has to stop." Annie's gaze held centuries of secrets. "The doll," she began cryptically. "It binds us all." A doll? The cursed doll? Jamie's mind raced with every folklore tale and whispered warning they had ever heard. They knew they had to find it, to destroy it. The search was maddening. Every time Jamie thought they were close, reality would shift again. Walls would blink out of existence only to be replaced by others. The very floor seemed to rise and fall like the chest of a sleeping giant. Then, in a room where the walls pulsed with veins of shadow, Jamie found it. A porcelain figure so delicate and yet so terrible that it seemed to absorb all hope from the room. It was perched upon a miniature throne made of children's bones, engraved with runes that danced before Jamie's eyes. Without thinking, Jamie lunged for it, smashing it against the ground where it shattered with an ear-piercing wail that rose and fell in an instant. Silence fell like a guillotine. The house shuddered, and then nothing. Everything was normal again, or so it seemed. The distorted corridors snapped back into place as if they had never been twisted at all. The children, the lost ones, had vanished. Jamie stumbled outside into daylight that seemed too bright, too real. Days passed. Life returned to its mundane rhythms around them. But there were moments, fleeting seconds, when whispers threaded through the laughter of their friends at school, or when shadows danced just beyond sight in familiar rooms. And sometimes, just sometimes, when the dusk crept up on the edge of vision, Jamie thought they could see figures, small and silent, playing house within the dollhouse windows next door. Were these tricks of light or mere fragments of imagination, or had something from that twisted realm lingered behind? In their heart lay an unshakable dread. What if in destroying the doll, they had not ended the curse but instead set it free?
Thank you all so much for listening to the haunting tale of Into the Dollhouse. The whispers may have quieted and the flickering shadows stilled for now. But remember, in the world of horror, the silence is often just the calm before the storm. I hope the creeping dread and spectral chill of this story has found a place to nestle in your imagination. If you found yourself glancing over your shoulder, eyeing your own dolls suspiciously, or perhaps jumping at the echo of a rhyme, then I've done my duty as your purveyor of terror. Don't forget to exercise the power of your fingertips, like this story if it sent shivers down your spine, and subscribe for more tales that will have you questioning every creak and whisper in your home. Remember, every like ensures you're not the next to find your likeness peering out from a dollhouse window. Until we meet again, keep the lights on, and never ignore the voices that may seep through your walls. Good night, dear listeners. Sleep tight, and let's pray the dolls do the same.